Hello and welcome to the lecture on net present value. No, this is not deja vu. I did not repeat myself. We are bringing back some concepts. We're dusting those off that we learned in modules 1 and 2, that time value of money, which I told you is so critical to everything that we do in finance and much of what we do in life with our decisions that we make involving money and time. But we're going to bring back that concept. We're going to carry it forward through that MRI example. It could be any example, any project that you're undertaking for your organization, your healthcare organization, that's going to be bringing you a stream of revenues into your organization, and figuring out what that net present value is on that particular decision that you're making. And we will come full circle in this module by bringing back the cost of capital into that decision. So stay tuned for that as well. And then lastly, I'm going to introduce a new calculator from the same folks that brought you the calculator in the previous lecture that will help us with net present value. But I'm also going to bring back our arachnoid calculator so you can look at that. It can be done either way. I think you will like the newer calculator because it handles those uneven cash flows so much better and easier. So, all right, let's go back and take a look at our original sample that we have and revisit our MRI machine purchase. Okay, here's our MRI machine that we have. All of the other facts have remained the same from the initial um, our initial lecture on there that we had with it. The $2.5 million investment that has stayed, and all of the various cash flows that we receive. In the last lecture, we were able to calculate the internal rate of return on that investment. Now, let's say this. Let's say that, well, you've been able to, you now know how the cost of capital works. You know how to calculate the cost of capital for an organization. And let's say your boss says, well, we all know here at Faith Hospital that we have a cost of capital at 10% because we've been able to calculate that. And well, we need to apply that cost of capital to the cash flows that we have for this initial investment to discount those cash flows back to times zero, now using that cost of capital. Again, what is capital? That's the money that we get from various sources, either long-term debt or equity, to basically pay for those long-term investments that we do. That stuff, the big stuff, not the little daily stuff that we use, not syringes or rubber gloves, but the big, heavy, capital-intensive things like an MRI machine, those things that are durable, that are going to last for more than, typically 1 year, those type of things, buildings that have decades of useful service. That is where capital is applied to. And now we have a cost of capital for our organization. We know how to calculate it. We were given that. And let's apply that to these cash flows. Now, I do want you to pause right here. Again, make sure you're following along with me with pencil and paper. But do take note of the URL that I'm going to show you later on this calculator. Again, from the folks at Calculate Stuff. So far, I've really liked a few of their calculators. They've been really nice. And they also have a very, very nice NPV calculator that we're going to look at. But I want to show you that you could do this with the Arachnoid calculator as well. So let's bring back the Arachnoid. I'm not going to run through each cash flow, but I'll do a couple of them, and I think you'll see the pattern there. So let's bring back our Arachnoid calculator. And you can see I was kind of playing around already with it. So what I did in here, if you remember our cash flow in year one, in year one, right up in here, let's bring that right up in there, highlighting that year one, it was the 510,000. So that's my future value. It was in year one, so it's only one period. Their payments are not applicable. The interest rate, again, we're applying the cost of capital rate because that's how much it's going to cost us to go out and get the money to buy the MRI machine. Think about it like a loan. If I was to float a bond, or for us to go buy a car, we have a certain interest rate to buy that car. This is the interest rate that is going to be charged to us, again, the cost of capital for an organization to purchase an MRI machine. So that would be applicable when you think about it in discounting. What kind of discount rates would you use? Well, you would use what interest rates is going to cost me to get the money. That's what I'm going to use as to bring that back to zero, back to that zero time, I should say, not to zero value, but back to the zero time period. So when you calculate that and you hit your present value, you get 463,000 and some change. So that would be one of the five. And you have to repeat that process for each one of them. So let's do period 2, which if you go back, hopefully you've written that example down. But in period 2, we have made another $535,500. Want to make sure that that is in 2. Payments not applicable and interest rate is the same. Let's compute the present value. Boom. There's another one. So I've got 2 of the 5 cash flows calculated. So I would go through each of those 5 cash flows. I would write down that present value and subtract all of those from the initial investment. Do you remember what that was? The initial investment was how much? That 2.5 million. And what was left over is going to be your net, think of that net present value of that particular project. So that's one way to do it. Now you can see it's a little laborious. You got to go through each one of the cash flows to calculate that, and then you got to subtract it. All right, let's move that one on, but you could still use Arachnoid. Perfectly fine. Nice little time value money calculator. A good one to have saved. But let's bring in the big boy. All right, we're going to bring in our net present value calculator. Again, from the folks at calculatestuff.com. I really like this calculator a lot. So let's just have the default values in here. Let's go ahead and plug in our initial investment, 2,500,000, 2, 3. Okay, check. Discount rate, I know what that is. That was our cost of capital, which was 10%. Cash flows, so I know it's going to be a little boring here as I enter the cash flows, but that was year 1. And 2, 530, 5, 500. You think I know all these cash flows by heart now. And 562, 275. And in year 4, we're making even more money. Just doing all kinds of scans here, doing all your brain scans. And in case you didn't know, MRI is not very good for bone. It's good for soft tissues, but not bone. Just thought I would throw that out there for you. Good for ligaments, though. So when you have those ligament injuries, those sports athletes, that's where they get the MRIs done. And that's about all I know about MRI because I'm a CT person, which is good for soft tissue and bone, but MRI gets much better visuals on soft tissue. All right, so there's enough little medical imaging knowledge for you. I'm sure we probably have some MRI techs out there. Maybe I didn't get that quite right, um, but CT is so much faster. When you are in an emergency situation, you can get a scan done in minutes versus a half an hour. All right, so let's double check our numbers here. We've got that. That looks good. Okay, check, 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 check. I think we're good. All right, so you see how easy that is? You just enter those cash flows in, you enter in your cost of capital, or again, whatever your discount rate is. In this case, it's the cost of capital. And your initial investment, double checking. You can add additional years for additional cash flows. You can subtract, just make sure if you are doing something shorter, that you're hitting those red X's and subtracting that. All right, let's calculate, and it will do everything for us, which is great. And so we have a net present value of $82,000, about 82.5 on the MRI. So what does that tell us? 1, it's got a positive net present value. Yay, that's good. And that particular, and in today's term, in the now, in the times zero, we're always in time zero right now. That particular investment would net you $82,000. Again, net present value. All right, well there you go. That wasn't too bad, was it? That was pretty easy. So now you know how to calculate internal rate of return. You know how to calculate cost of capital. Um, you know a little bit about capital structure, enable, and kind of what that means. And you're also to bring this full circle by bringing that cost of capital into an actual decision for a project, piece of equipment, new hospital, women's imaging center, whatever it's going to be. You can bring back that cost of capital into a very real type of decision that you'd be making for your organization. Now, where is the one caveat in all of this? It all goes to your projections. Are your projections correct? Is this how much money you're really going to make in these years? Um, you could always do retrospective analysis after it's already happened and, calculate it, but this is really for making a decision in time zero about whether you're going to purchase that MRI machine. So if you got any of these numbers wrong in this cash flow, I mean, it could be devastating. Let's say you got that year 5 number wrong, and all of a sudden there's a brand new technology with MRI, and the salvage value on your MRI machine tanks, and you can't get anything for it. And not, instead of getting $1.3 million in year 5, you get, well, let's just plug it in. Let's see what happens. Let's just say in year 5, you got your machines antiquated, you're not making any more money, and you can't sell it for anything after you're done. I mean, it is a dinosaur at that point. Let's see what we can do here, and if that works, and let's calculate that. Yeah, see, there you go. Wow. All of a sudden you were like, "Hey, I'm getting promoted. I'm buying a new machine for my imaging center." But if you get that projection wrong, your net present value can really, really hurt you to the tune of, in this case, with a pretty severe adjustment in year 5. But I think you get the point that you all of a sudden decision that kind of looks good on paper really isn't, especially using your discount rate here, that which is the cost of capital for your organization. So it's, I guess, the art of this science is getting these cash flows correct in a very competitive environment that is healthcare. So, but that's why you get paid the big bucks, right? Well, there you go. That concludes this lecture on net present value and bringing in the cost of capital. So hopefully that brings it full circle for you. And as always, thanks for watching.